Good morning.
Visually see just the roof. Is that correct?
ex- exactly. From at least from where I stood
Where you
and what
stood?
I could see, I
Mm.
just saw the roof of the story building,
Mm.
and I was really shocked. That was when I was really alarmed. That, in fact, it got me shocked. I mentioned I was about 500 meters away from it.
Mm.
I was shocked because I was like, if this story building is submerged, then it's a matter of time, and with some more downpour, and then this water was going to get into my area. So inside my room, I would always come out, I think, a minute or two just to check, and also walk out of the compound to check if it was actually coming close to me. So,
You were
I mean,
doing some mathematics at this stage.
you know,
Empiricity is what you were doing. You had determined that you were 500 meters away, and by the second, depending on the volume and the speed of the water, you were wondering how soon it was going to hit you.
exactly. That's it. I was turning into a mathematician that day, and look, at the end of the day, I had to even move out and come to the office because we were asked to stay at home if it was safe. I just told myself it wasn't safe to stay at home, so I just left, and
You
then
mean
I
you
had to.
defied the honorable minister's directive that you should
No,
stay at home?
because it wasn't safe at home,
It
so I
was
had to
not.
leave home and move to a safer place.
you
So,
you you
I
you
mean,
you found solace in your office. It was safer to
yes,
be
yes,
in the
yes,
office rather than
yes,
be at home. And this is
exactly.
where my older brothers will say the gumption will work, because the minister is talking about safety. If home is not safe, then you rather gravitate towards where safety will be. And we've been talking to Mr. Mark Jordan Sika Nate, who is a financial analyst and works with Loris Africa. And today we'll be looking at the subject of the impact of the floods on businesses. But he chose to look at the impact on himself first. In fact, playing it safe. And then after that, he has all the serenity to come and talk about what's good. Now, Mark Jordan, let's get to business. And thank God, thank God, without any issues at all about those of your immediate environmental community colleagues who were affected. We thank God that your facility was not affected, and we hope and we have prayed and we have asked that government and all the requisite agencies, and of course, I think that we should give thumbs up to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who's already directed the Minister for Finance, to raise some 300 million Ghana cedis to support the impact of the floods. And so we thank God, in conclusion, that you are safe and fine. Now, getting back to business, let me ask the general question of what the assessment of the impact, of the immediate and long term of these floods on businesses, particularly looking at SMEs across the country.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's a good after looking at the assessing the impact on myself, that's a good start to the whole discussion. Um, I think it's clear what the impact has been. I mean, when you look at it from the videos that are popping up on social media and the likes. However, I mean, drilling down, you would also understand that this category of businesses that we are talking about really contributes massively to the Ghanaian economy. SMEs contribute at least you'll be looking at more than 70%. They contribute at least 70% to our economy, or registered businesses in Ghana. And in terms of employment, you'll be looking at roughly around same figure. Okay. For look, because of these numbers, it raises concerns, and then it tells you the magnitude of impact on these businesses. I mean, it happened on Monday. We do not have very clear numbers, but like I said, from the very overhead numbers that I've mentioned, their contribution to the GDP and also employment, you can tell what it means for them. And also for SMEs, right? SMEs run a business model so that, like, on a missing out just a day in sales can cause something we call a liquidity shock, because they do more of some will purchase their goods on credit and go sell, and they have to repay after sale. Now you didn't have the opportunity to do that sale for some days, right? But you've gone for the goods and you have to definitely make some payment. So that means that will pose some liquidity or cash constraints on these businesses. Also, in terms of they servicing their debt and their loans, this could be other longer term impact on these businesses. And so really, that's it. In terms of the impact, if I even want to even close up, right, on the impact on businesses and even the broader economy, um, World Bank data shows that developing countries, which includes Ghana, right, low to middle income countries, which include Ghana, lose at least 2 to 5% of their GDP annually to climate related challenges like the flood that we faced. Now, you'll be looking at some 6 billion Ghana cities on average daily. That's over 200 million, and that's already there, right? Then this flood comes in to compound the issue. So I can understand why, in terms of the emergency contingent fund that His Excellency has directed the finance minister to look at. I think from the face, we are looking at something around the figure you mentioned earlier, around 300 million. So yeah, that's what the impact look like on SMEs.
Excellent. And that's why you are a financial analyst. And I get it when you try to put the percentage of these people in the informal sector, which is about 70% in terms of their contribution to GDP, and how that kind of figure will impact our nation's development. Now, we have a panoramic photograph of what this impact would look like. Let's reverse one step back and see why and how development planning, urban planning, as I would say, will impact, how the recurring floods will affect the Ghana's economic development in terms of the investment climate and investor confidence. We have a
Okay.
photograph from you of what the impact actually is. But let's see how this act of nature and its recurrence will impact our economic development, looking at investment and investor confidence.
I think really when you look at it from the face, right, and you were an investor and you were considering Ghana and any other African country, um, and I mean prior to Monday, you had probably concluded on Ghana, and you had concluded on some areas, right, in the heart of Accra. I think automatically you're going to take a pause and then review your decision again, given what happened on Monday. So that's the broader level impact on investment. Now, let me draw further. Um, like a typical investor would look at least three key areas of risks, right, in entering on a broader spectrum, in entering or placing investment in an economy, right. After doing all the assessment comparing to other economies, they will be looking at your macroeconomic dynamics, right? We recently exited IMF and IMF program. We're all happy on the milestone that we achieved. So yes, they'll be looking at that. Your inflation is low in a single digit, even though we've recorded some upticks in the past 3 months. It's still contained within acceptable limits. Should I put it that way? That's on a macro level. Your currency is performing well. The Ghana cedi has been relatively stable in recent times. Okay, and your general interest rate environment and how even consumer demand and the likes is, your macroeconomic dynamics will give color to that risk. Now, after that, the person will come to also assess your political risks, right? What the risks is like in terms of government transitions and policies and the likes in the country, right? I mean, then they will come to the operational side, the operational risks, right? In terms of um, in their day-to-day operations, what are the key things that are going to affect them as a business, right? And I think that the picture of the flood will just pop up, right? Because then if you are going to set up, let's say, a manufacturing firm, you in a particular zone, we saw how a warehouse somewhere around the Spinters heading towards the Tama enclave. We saw the amount of goods that were lost, to the flood. So they are going to assess this and say that, look, yes, the macroeconomic climate is intact. In fact, Ghana is ranked one of the peaceful nations, right? And so, in terms of the political climate, they are going to check the box. But there will come a huge operational risk posed by the flood in terms of what they could lose. I could say that for the past few days since the raid, businesses have been quite slow. In fact, if you check those with the businesses with the muscles, the large firms, they've even advised clients to transact with them through their digital platform if they can, right? Some have also had to close very early. So generally, it takes a toll or a dent productivity in the economy, right? And that will pose a significant risk to any investor. And if you have such risks to the day-to-day operations of an organization, right, it becomes quite worrying.
Okay.
And so I'll say that that is going to be a challenge that we'll have to deal with in order to um, should I say, work out that risks to any investor. Because imagine the businesses that were impacted by the flood. You don't want to conclude and say that all came from equity, right? Even if they were equity, 100% equity stakes. In equity stakes, I mean that the monies that were used to run these businesses, even if they were 100% provided by the owner of these businesses, that is huge. Like, that is still
It still
it's
has
still a
an
shock to
impact.
them.
It still has
Yes,
an
it still has
impact
some
because
impact.
then
And
the
then
ownership is not, back to its normal self, and that loss could definitely impact it. I think that we have quite a general, photograph again in there. But let me just find out. This is an act of nature. I mean, and it happens everywhere. I mean, floods occur in America, floods occur in Europe, floods occur in Asia, floods occur in Australia. And so, would you say that the mechanics of these acts of nature probably does impact us slightly different from these other jurisdictions that I have mentioned?
okay, I think just yesterday I was discussing with a colleague. I was showing a video of Houston, USA, experiencing some flood after about 10 minutes or some 20 minutes downpour. Right. Um, I think, like you mentioned, these are acts of nature, right? But how we show the impact, right? And the impact of businesses, the impact on businesses and households, and even the broader macro economy is still dependent on the very activities that we do as a people, right? Yes, the heavy rains are going to come, but if we have deliberately choked our drainage systems so that these rains do not have a way of their own, but the rains or the water will have to find a way for itself, then yes, we'll have the situation where the water will just find itself in our homes and the likes. I mean, clearly my heart goes out to all of us who have really been hit by it, but the truth is one, and it is clear that aside the climate change factors related to the flood which occurred on Monday, it is clear that we've had some human input in there. We've had some actions from ourselves, which I could say to some extent that is causing this flood as well. Because,
I think
I
I
mean,
can't agree with you more, my brother. I think we need to set those two facilities apart very clearly. And I think you have alluded to that. And I think it is only fair that we re emphasize that. That yes, floods do occur everywhere. And I think you had an excellent example of the Houston case. But we also know that Houston is actually below, it's located on a platform or on a table below the seawater level. And so naturally, and I appreciate it when you talk about just a few minutes of rain, leading to flood systems and all that. But I also agree with you that the systems that have been put in place will much more than rapidly manage the situation when the floods occur in those areas. Because in our case in Ghana, I think that the empirical data that has been espoused from the Ghana Meteorological Agency and through the Ministry of Interior and even to the Office of the President, which has come out, clearly indicates that the volumes of water that the Ghana earth had to swallow would all things being equal, including even clean and clear drainages, would still have caused some kind of impact on our environment, including businesses. So I just want us to set these two parameters very clear apart. That yes, I agree with you that there's some level of human contribution to the extent of the impact on us, the act of nature and the volumes of water that actually came down could still have caused, just like it will do in Houston and in other places of the world, will still have experienced some level of flooding. I think that's a fundamental point from where we need to start from. Now, continuing, I think that we need to now look at the kind of things, including human, that we have done. What is the role of development planning in all these things? And then after that, we'll come back home where we are looking at the assessment of the impact of the floods on businesses. What could development planning have done apart from our human interventions, which may have resulted in this situation?
Okay. So I think what development planning could have done is that yes, development planning would have given us a blueprint that this particular building shouldn't have been situated here. And I mean, one intriguing thing about our recent flood, right, and the rains we've had recently is also the fact that, I mean, you see significant impact on capital expenditures like buildings and even to some extent cars. The rains are taking cars away, buildings are falling apart, right? So that raises, I mean, some developmental issues in there. How were these buildings brought up in the first place, right? Yeah, so the developmental part is going to help us understand or will give us clear guidelines on, let's say, even where to build and how to even put up those buildings. Our local engineers, our local urban planners, um, would give us that clear direction. Um, Even in terms of where to have even um, um, situated some buildings and even park some cars, right? Development on that end would have helped us. And also in terms of even getting signals of the rain. I think most people are now saying that it is in recent times after the Monday flood that we've had the meteo
You
unit
mean the
really
Ghana
give
Meteorological Agency, right?
agency. Yes, yes, it is after Monday that um I think I've heard some complaints around the fact that after Monday we've had very proactive updates from them. Citizens would have expected such updates, quite early, but they also are saying they had hinted on it even prior, like a week.
Well,
So
that's another very good point that you're making there. You know, and Ghanaians, once we suffer some of these things, excuses would come from all angles. But I want to also emphatically emphasize that the Ghana Meteorological Agency has been spot on with its mandate in ensuring that very accurate data, and in fact, now they're looking at many more active platforms where they can engage the citizenry, apart from the other state agencies and institutions and even government itself. They are looking for varied and wider platforms to engage. So on this occasion, yes, I heard some of these complaints about people saying we didn't know about it, we didn't hear about it, and all that kind of thing. But at least we are privy. And when I say we, I mean Z Multimedia, the other media houses. And if you check the GMA or GMET, Ghana Meteorological Agency's own website, you would see the kind and quantum and quality of information that has been placed there. All we need to do now is to stop putting the blame games. Let's look out for where we can get this information. And I think if it is about accessing the information, probably will agree that let's intensify how we can communicate a little more effectively with this. But check their website, check other platforms. They have been doing some communication and it's been quite accurate. I think it's also fair that we clarify that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it actually. Um, so that's what these are the things that the development side would have also helped solve.
Excellent.
And even that was pre the flood, post the flood.
Mm,
Um, in very developed economies, you would have businesses take on some comprehensive insurance packages
mm,
and the likes that
mm,
helps them recover from the flood,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
You don't seem to really see that in our part of the world
mm.
because, I mean, when you're looking at the measures, we have the pre-flood measures, things that we could have done before it comes, and then after the flood, how do we even survive the challenge? And I mean, insurance is one of it. And really, when you check the space, in fact, as I speak to you, Ghana's insurance penetration is still hovering around 2% or a little below 2%, right, of our GDP.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
and
We will come to some of those mechanics as to how we'll manage them and all that. But today, is our day. Is our day. And it's 2nd July, and we're looking at the facts and we're looking at its impact and all that. You made a point before we go into some of the mitigative mechanisms and measures that would manage all these challenges that we have. But you talked about when we looked at what developmental planning and stuff like that, you mentioned factors like the planning experts that we have, the engineering systems that we have. You know, the statutory system has in place some of these structures that should, all things being equal, deal with some of these things. Now, where would you think is where the problem is? Is it the lack of the structures? Is it the lack of the systems? Is it the lack of the institutions? Is it the lack of the skill? As in, don't we have the engineers? Don't we have the planners in our various, if you ask me, I'll proffer some answers. But you are the expert today. You are the professor. You tell us, where is the problem in terms of these structural systems that should, all things being equal, minimize or mitigate such natural disasters? Is it the skilled manpower? Is it the structures? Is it the system that is failing, which is resulting into this situation?
I, I I'll say that a blend of all what you've mentioned is contributing to this, right? And to some extent, maybe the failure in the proper functioning of these systems, right, is actually the major driver. Now, I believe that most districts have district engineers and then some form of that sits under the arms of the Ministry of Works and Housing, right? And when you go to our local government levels, we have them there, right? Over the period, I mean, we've seen them put stop works on some buildings. And for me, I see stop work on a building, produce permit, right? Or stop work by, um, let's say, AMA, right? And then few months later, you see the work continuing. So the question I really ask myself mostly is that why was the stop work printed on this building in the first place? Has that challenge really been resolved? Because if you put stop work on a particular building, and let's say the challenge was because that building is in a waterway, right? And that challenge is not solved, or that means that we can't really, in terms of a building being in a waterway, it's not negotiable. So if you put a stop work in a building that's on a waterway, to say that you are going to demolish or get rid of that building, it is non-negotiable because we all know the impact of the impact of leaving the building to continue. Right, it blocks waterway. But what do we see in our country? Handshake hands, and then few months later, you see the building. I mean, put up in good condition, and then later, because these people have had permits from the local, I mean, assemblies, it now becomes difficult for us to later on come and say that we want to demolish it. There's a typical example of a building in somewhere Ashaliboche. I think about a six-story building. I mean, when you look at it, I'm not an engineer by expertise, but when you look at it from afar, you can see how tilted the building is, and clearly, it's not. Uh, uh, should I say a part of its architecture? It's just simply because something has gone wrong from probably the foundation, right? And about 2 years now, residents around the area have been complaining. I think that's under the Adenta Municipal Assembly, and they've stepped in. I think my last check on it was that they needed clear permits in order to pull it down with the case in court or so, right? My the challenge is, imagine if this building was spotted right from the beginning, because now it becomes challenging to bring it down. You're talking of a six-story unit, a six-story building. It becomes difficult because you are now thinking the investment the person has made into this building and everything, and now the issue of legality comes in, because then didn't you see the person from the onset? So it's, if you look at the very examples I've cited, it gives a clear picture that these we are seeing the developmental failure from um, the fact that the systems are not working.
You put it very succinctly and very rightly. You said systemic failure.
Yeah,
Because yes, we have the structures in name. You would have the district planners, you would have the district engineers, you would have the architectural systems also having to pass all these things. But what you're trying to point out is that in spite of the existence and presence of all these institutions, how to get them to efficiently operate and get due performance is impacted. And so, for that matter, even though we have the structures there, we have the systems there, there is a certain failure. And I can't agree with you more. I was going to tease you when you said you see that building at Shadabotwe. I have seen some interesting designs lately where it's like a zigzag. I have seen some wonderful designs in Ghana, not only outside of Ghana. I mean, outside of Ghana, there are buildings that are built like a web, like a Z. It goes, left, it comes right, and stuff like that. So, some wonderful designs coming up today as a result of technological advancement and all that. But what you're saying actually is that in Ghana, even though we have these systems in place, ensuring that the right things are done is becoming challenged. And yesterday, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic and Commander in Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, had the opportunity to call on Ghanaians to re examine the values with which we live as a people. The values. Yes, a six-story building, as you have rightly pointed to. But what is the effect, the impact, the cost, assuming this building, because of the investment put in, was allowed to stay and collapsed as a result of a natural disaster, an act of God, what would be the value of that cost? And so, values is what is coming here. And so, I think that when you point to systemic failures as a result of professionals, institutional frameworks failing to deliver what is expected of them, I cannot agree with you more. I think that you're putting it right there. And I'm not too sure the extent to which Ghanaians, businesses, communities, in fact, local authorities and assemblies, and government as a whole is beginning to review what has happened to us. I don't know what else you want to add to it. And then we can now go back to assessing the financial, the economic, and the business impacts. And Jordan.
Yeah, I think the values you mentioned is so important because you could see some aside the overall systems, right? I mean, uh, personally, as individuals, we are also doing one thing in one way or the other. I mean, I chanced on a video yesterday of a resident, I think, was alleged somewhere at Denta dumping refuge in a drainage system just because the weather changed and it feels like it was going to rain. So the hope is that the rain will come and clear the rubbish away, right? So it is great that we all assess our values as individuals and understand that these very things that we do, these very activities that we commit to day in, day out, they come to bite us in a longer run. So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good people out there. This is the Business Breakfast on Z. And today we're assessing the impact of the floods on businesses. But obviously, these businesses live within communities and are driven by the people. This is what we bring to the good people of the Republic of Ghana. It is the Business Breakfast on Z. Z is your lifestyle, leisure, and business destination. Join the conversation by sending us your WhatsApp on 0544 321 and you can call us on 030 And if you want to join us on the social platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, you can reach us at ZFMGH. Very simple. ZFMGH if it's Instagram, Facebook, or X. And now, if you're on TikTok or you're on YouTube where we're streaming live, it's Z Multimedia. Mr. Mark Jordan Sikanate, who is a senior research associate with Lauros Africa, is the professor that we're speaking to this morning and doing an incisive inquisition about what the causes and factors of these floods are and assessing the economic impact. And at the end of it all, try to promulgate and come up with some systems that we can put in place to ensure that we do not have such recurrence. Now, my brother, you talked about the contribution of the informal sector to the nation's economy, close to 70%. Virtually everybody within this bracket has been hit. And again, scientifically, you talked about losses of such situations which are pegged about 5% of annual GDP. In nominal terms, because now we are coming to reality, can you give us a framework of what this actually looks like? The spare parts dealers at Okanshi, the early dawn Makola market people, the people who are engaged in the chain of food businesses, from the farm gate to the storehouse and to the shop, in Accra or wherever we can find it, up to where they are processed into some edible, sumptuous food that I have been craving for this morning. hotels, and all the sectors that we can think of. Can you give us a picture of what this actually means when floods hit such informal sector businesses, the SMEs and the others that we can think of?
Okay. So, I mean, structurally, we'll have our economy in the, I mean, industrial sector, the services, and then the agriculture. Now, the services sector is, to some extent, where a chunk of these SMEs sit, and then the agri side as well, right? Now, the services sector alone contributes over 45% of GDP, right? And you have a massive number of these players in there being like SMEs, right? Being hit by this, it means your one your capital is being affected. And I could say to some extent that for some SMEs, we are looking at close to about 100% capital eroded by this flood. Because your typical SME doesn't hold like 100 million Ghana cedis in capital. Your typical SME is, I mean, running a working capital in terms of the cash or the amount of money they use to run the business on a daily basis. You are looking at your typical SME having on average like 10,000 Ghana cedis. And trust me, the harm caused by the flood we saw on Monday, to some, I think for some SMEs, they'll have to start all over again, right? And if you are looking at, let's say, a food joint, which was adversely impacted by the flood, you know, submerged to, let's say, even the window level. Yeah, talking of you losing most of your items and then your equipment that you use to operate as an SME or as an SME in the food chain. And you're talking about getting new, let's say, utensils, because your utensils were carried away by the rains, right? So practically, for some SMEs, you are looking at this starting businesses all over again. Right? And that comes at a huge cost, because research also makes it clear that for most SMEs, they start with their capital is actually sourced from close relatives and family members, and even to some extent their churches. Now, the very relative you'll be running to some extent has been also been hit by the flood and is finding their way out, right? That means they are not going to get you that 10,000 Ghana cedis in order to pick up your business again. So in a longer run, you are looking at business or SMEs, some SMEs shutting down for some ample period of time in order to pick up again. And it even becomes worse when you are looking at SMEs who employ at least 1 to 2 people, right? Or at least two people persons. That means the business is hurt. The 2 people who also rely on the business for income are equally hurt, right? And it goes on and on. The chain goes on and on and on. So practically, right, this is what the impact looks like on some SMEs, because most of these SMEs are, they, I mean, like I mentioned from the beginning, they don't hold over 100 million Ghana cedis in capital. You are looking at very sizable amounts, in the thousands. And I could say to some extent that the flood has really done adverse justice to that, and some will have to start all over again. So that is a picture of what the impacts look like. Yeah.
101.9 FM.
And that is what the picture of the impact looks like, coming from Mr. McJordan Sika Nati, who is a senior research associate with Loris Africa, looking at the impact of the floods on the good people of this country. Well, I think that it's a very good time to take a short break. with an inspirational spot of music. And what are we looking at? Mark Jordan tells me that he's a lover of reggae, even though he's a man of God. He loves it so much. And this one that comes from Stone Boy, which asks, if you don't do the right things and the floods come, where are you gonna run go? Run go is what is next on your dial on Z 101.9 FM. 9:35, 35 minutes gone past the hour of 9. And we're treating you to this spot of music coming from Stone Boy. Where you gonna run go? Well, don't go away. Stick with us. We'll be right back with much more expose coming from Mr. Mark Jordan Sika Nati. Where you gonna run go?
This is Business Breakfast.
This is Business Breakfast.
This is Business Breakfast. I'm listening to the Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM.
Whoa, tell me where we gonna run to. After making our motherland a better place to live. Tell me where we gonna run to. When them say we have to pay for the oxygen we breathe.
Nine FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business platform. This is where we bring all the issues that are affecting you to live and engage you in that kind of positive conversations to build the society, build the businesses that we have, and of course, build our dear nation, Ghana. What have we been doing today is about attempting to digress the problem, the challenge that we are faced with is an act of nature. It is rain. It will come when it has to come because it falls everywhere in the world, even in the arid lands, in the Emirates. you would see some very heavy rains visiting them when it has to. It's in US, it is in Europe, it is in Australia, and of course it is in Africa. What we're attempting to do this morning is, what can we do to afford ourselves a certain system that will mitigate if the rains decides to fall? How can we manage it? We have talked about the responsibility of government in ensuring that the right institutional framework has been put in place. And we can all attest to the fact that in Ghana, the rightful institutions are already in place. Now, government also has the responsibility in ensuring that the right systems, the guidelines, the policy frameworks, the do's and do nots are expected to be put in place. And yes, we still know, as McJordan Sikanati rightly pointed out too, when you fail to put your building, you fail to obtain the right permits and put them at the right places, we in the district assemblies will come and put on your wall, stop work and produce permits. All these systems have been put in place. But what happens to us? In fact, we are even told that some people, not even the district assemblies, some private individuals, deliberately put on their walls, stop work, produce permit, just so that these officers would know that, oh yes, we've come here already, and the people are operating from inside. So the systems are also put in place, but the humans that we are, we find very deliberate, which come back to bite us, ways to go around these systems. What can we do is the next question that we are going to ask ourselves. When these floods came and we had these disasters and people were moved from their homes and people's offices were encumbered and things that are not expected to happen to us did happen, government has come back again to say that, well, these are my own people. Let me look for some fund to see how we can mitigate the impact on them. Does it stop there? I say the answer is a big no. No. There is much more to be done. We'll look at what government will specifically have to do, but it will go to the very tail end. What are the structures? What are the framework? What are the other things that they can put in place beyond the support that is given to the people? But then let's come back to look at the stakeholders who work with these businesses, the SMEs and stuff like that, the financial institutions, insurance, the tax agencies. What can we do to make sure that when these acts of nature, what is it that these financial institutions can do to bring the system under control? And then last but not least will be we, the businessmen ourselves, the SMEs ourselves, the sole proprietorships ourselves. What is it that we can also do? Not to leave out the limited liability entities. We are all involved. It depends on the scale upon which you're doing your business. So we are going to look at what it is that we can do from that strata of three entities: the businessmen themselves, the financial institutions and agencies, and the related agencies that are supposed to be supporting this whole thing. And then finally, we'll be looking at what government can do. We'll start first and foremost with the businesses themselves. And I want to believe that my good brother, McJordan Sikanati, Senior Research Associate with Loras Africa, will do justice to that. It's exactly 43 minutes gone past the hour of 9, and you are listening to the Business Breakfast on Z. We start with number 1, and we are looking at the businesses. I'll ask a double-barreled question. First, are the businesses doing enough to prepare for climate-related risks through insurance, business continuity plans, disaster preparedness measures, and the others? That is 1. And 2 is, when we are hard hit in the face like this, what can businesses do? Now, Jordan, over to you.
Thank you. So there are various measures that businesses can take. All right, because most of these businesses, you'll be looking at operating with machineries, right? You'll be looking at operating with um, like human beings also operating in there. That's your human resource, right? And then even the business location itself. So clearly, I mean, from what we all experienced on Monday, sends a signals to us out there, especially businesses, that choosing a business location today is not only about brand visibility in that particular location. You'll be also looking at doing some assessment in terms of the flat prone nature of the area, right? And should that happen, how you go around it. I think technology has also helped us. Um, Despite the situation, I would say that this week has been one of my, I mean, packed weeks, but I've still been able, thanks to the grace of God, even on Monday, I was able to be um, on a show similar, discussing market momentum and the likes. And I did that via a digital platform. So I'll say that yes, these dynamics will come, but gradually as we move into the digital ecosystems, SMEs should tap into that realms in order to um, enhance business continuity when these things should these things occur. I mean, if you're a business that and your model permits it, I would say that you should be looking into the digital space as well. Then I think insurance, right? Because that is, should I say, the the last go to that you can resort to. That insurance is looking at, should the risks mitigate, right? Should you put in place all the very measures we've mentioned, and then the risks does okay? How do you get back onto your feet to continue business, right? Insurance is a go to, and I must say that even though Ghanaian perception about insurance has improved over the period, the trust issue is still there, right? Um, I was looking at some numbers from our insurance perception index, right? When you check the index from 2019 to 2020 and then to the last number, which I saw was 2024, you see a considerable decline in the index, right? The perception index, right? And one of the factors is around the trust and even how people see insurance. If you have a country, right, and a survey is conducted, and about um, more than a good number of the people who fill the survey or who respond to the survey, about 15 plus 20 plus people, 20, I mean, in terms of percentage people, right, are saying that they like subscribing to an insurance means they are actually welcoming like a disaster in the future. That's what their belief and faith tells them. So I think as SMEs, and as not just SMEs, any business at all, uh, which want to strive, would have to really work on that perception. I mean, subscribing to an insurance doesn't mean you are welcoming disaster in the future. Okay. And when you check our insurance numbers, penetration is still low. I mentioned earlier. In fact, over 5 billion Ghana cedis was collected in gross insurance premium. A chunk of this amount is into just third party, right? On the non life insurance or general insurance segment. A chunk of it is third party insurance. And what is driving third party insurance? It is driven by regulatory regulations. It's mandatory, right? Um, if you don't have a third party insurance, I mean that you could get in trouble with the police because it's mandatory for you to have a third party insurance on your your cars and your vehicle. That's why we see that amount in the non-life
And
segment,
of
right?
course, we have other forms of insurances as well. I mean,
Yes,
yes, the third party is there. You have the comprehensive as well, and I think in between comprehensive and third party, there are other forms of insurances
yes,
that are
yes.
rightly
So
in there as well.
yes, so I was just trying to say that even though the number in terms keeps rising, it is coming from a particular segment that is legally backed, right? We will have to see growth from the other liability. We have liability insurance, right? And even when you check that space seems to be growing. And one of the things covering or driving it is fire insurance, because you realize that I think somewhere last year and the start of this year, for some time now, we've been hit by some fires in some our market.
The
So we
fires have
saw,
always lived with
yes,
us, and it looks like a
yes,
perennial challenge as well. You know,
yes.
sometimes it's difficult to understand what the people, especially in this case, talking about the business community and all that. I think that you seem to have done a very good prognosis of what the business people can do. Let me take you one step higher. The SMEs and the business community have, as one of the major stakeholders, the financial institutions, the insurance companies, and stuff like that. So, yes, we need to take the insurance when sometimes because of lack of education and sometimes because of our cultural values and systems and all that, we're unable to do that. What can these financial institutions and the insurance companies also do to help us?
Okay. So I think what can be done from their end, and I must commend the insurance companies. They've done a really great job lately in terms of driving insurance education on insurance in the Ghanaian ecosystem. That's why we see the numbers even in the life insurance segment, right? I think the next wave of education, okay, should come hard on insurance that covers natural disasters like what we saw on Monday, right? Because it's no fault of a business owner that, I mean, the rain had to come down very heavy, and like we mentioned, even with the necessary drainage systems and the likes, we are at risk of facing some level of flood, right? That means if we fix all the human aspects of it, we'll still see some level of it, and we'll need them to really go hard on education in terms of the liability insurance that are available to businesses in order to cover them from such risks. Okay, and also aside the education, um, collectively, it becomes difficult when just one insurance player wants to drive such an agenda. It should be a collective thing, so that you even have consortium of insurance underwriting certain form of risks. Because if it has to be underwritten by just one insurance company, then it becomes heavy on your balance sheet. I'm not sure your shareholders or even your board is going to management going to be happy carrying such risks. But it becomes lighter when the whole insurance industry is trying to carry together, right? So I will encourage consortium insurance and collectively underwriting some of these insurance packages, and also pricing it so that uh, I mean, this we can have the buy-in of uh, business across board, from SMEs to the large scale businesses. Because let me even create an example with the automobile insurance. I was saying to the average Ghanaian now, um, comprehensive insurance, which covers you, it covers full indemnity, should any loss occur to your vehicle,
Yeah.
is priced as luxury in the minds of the average Ghanaian,
Mm.
right? And it's because of how it is, right? You have very few people in that space, in the space, subscribing to that package. That
That's right.
means you have to really price it so that it makes it economically viable for you to carry on such risks as an
In fact, it
insurance.
has to be attractive to the
Yes.
clientele. And so you've mentioned about 3 points there. You're talking about education, you're talking about building consortiums so that you don't carry too much heavy loads that will potentially collapse your insurance business and stuff like that. And then finally, you're talking about the pricing. Mark Jordan, we have to be going. Now, let's look at what the ultimate responsibility of the government should be beyond doling out funding support for flood victims and it affecting businesses and stuff like that. What is it that government can do to make sure that these situations are mitigated to the barest minimum?
Okay. So I think government reaction so far is welcoming the relief support because the loss is quite huge for one person to carry. But beyond that, we would say that the very systems we mentioned are in the hands of government. So I think I would plead that the various agencies that are responsible for carrying out or overseeing this particular space beef up their work and I mean put people to book so that it deter others from doing wrong. Yeah.
Enforcement.
Yes,
Enforcement.
the enforcement should really be hard
Enforcement.
on building on waterways and the likes.
Mm.
However, the major challenge is still there. If we put in place all these structures, there's some damages that has been done that we have to fix. An expert in the space quantify it as some $500 million, right? If you want to put that into perspective, it's about 2 to 3% of our 2026 government expenditure, right? And given government's record or given our record as a people in terms of implementing policies and seeing outcome from that policies, I mean, it hasn't been the best. Okay, what I've seen over the period, at least, is the fact that when we have our big brothers in the room, we're able to comport ourselves and do the right things, right? And 500 million is quite a heavy lifting because I can understand the other key priority areas that government has to look out for. But thankfully, um, I was asking this question. I was asking myself, probably it might be the time for Ghana to subscribe to the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Facility, right? Because in there, one, we qualify because we are within the low to middle income country range, and it has a flexible repayment period of I think about 20 years with about 10 years and a half of grace period,
Yes.
right? This is all to drive sustainable and resilient transformation as we approach certain key climate change. And I say that this for a reason.
Mm.
I said because of our track record in, yes, government could say that we're going to do A, B, C, D to fix it, but government go, government come, and then we leave the project. But if I think our track record is such that if we are using another person's money, we're able to do it well. And for me, given the dire nature of the challenge, I'll prescribe that we eh, go subscribe to the IMF's RSF program, the Resilience and Sustainability Facility, right?
Well, that
Which,
has been the prognosis that has come from Mark Jordan Sika Nate. We all have a responsibility. The ordinary man in the community, you have a responsibility. The business owner, you have a responsibility. The financial institutions and insurance companies have a wonderful responsibility in there. But at the end of it all, government sits with you to ensure that the regulations, the framework, the policies, and everything would have to work. But here comes the prescription for McJordan Sikanate. He says, let's go to the IMF. I know that many hands will be up in attempting to contest this kind of prescription, but he believes the IMF's resilience and sustainability program is something that would afford us some relief and drive us forward. This is how we bring the curtains down today, and I can't afford but to say a very big thank you to you, Mr. Mark Jordan Sikanati, Senior Research Associate of Loras Africa, looking at the challenge of the floods on our businesses, which comes down to the whole community and its responsibility that comes with it. In just 1 minute, it will be 10 o'clock, and we will be moving on to the brighter side with Jeremy Okorie Amwakon. Thank you, Mark Jordan Sikanate. Thank you, the wonderful production team. Thank you, Mr. DJ Wade, the technical guys, and all the teams there. I will not leave you just like that. God will bring the Holy Spirit. But Nana Safo Kantanka on Z101.9 FM leaves you in the hands, very warm hands, of Ben Bracon. And he says, Marie Magruzi. Until we come back your way Monday morning at about 6:30, stay good, stay pure. God richly bless you all. Bye for now.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. Leisure and Business Radio.
You are listening to your favorite radio station, Z 101.9 FM.